Here's a video that I did 10 months ago for those of you who haven't seen it yet. The Milwaukee Hispanic Street Gang History, in which I talk about this big bloody street fight that happened between the Latin Kings and the East Side Mafiosos. Carlos Hernandez, aka Hollywood, one of the original members of the Latin Kings during the early 80s of the south side of Milwaukee. One of the original members that started the Latin King chapter in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Hello everyone. Once again, this is Dare to Speak. In the early 80s, there was just one particular guy who was one of the original founders of the Latin Kings in the south side of Milwaukee. He was one of the three people that started it, along with this guy from Chicago, who was a Latin King who came by, and of course you know the story about how they started so they could actually fight against the Spanish Cobras. And then in a couple of years, they were recruiting a bunch of people, and they pretty much grew very large in numbers. And this person is known as Carlos Hernandez, aka Hollywood. Now, from what I understand, in the 1990s, that he turned his life around. He became like an outreach worker for gangs and stuff like that. And of course, he got killed in the late 90s in a drive-by. Arthur Lopez, who came by on a bike and then took out a gun and shot him. Shot him 8 times. He got hit 8 times and he got killed. He died instantly. Now, I don't know too much about that, so I'm not really gonna talk about that part. But I am gonna focus on what I know about him during the early 80s and the reputation that he had. There was a lot of people that didn't like him, saying that he was a punk, a straight up punk, and that there was times where he really couldn't hold his own. And of course he would have his buddies jump in whenever he, from what I heard from this one lady, who was a nurse, this Mexican lady who pretty much knew him. And she said, yeah, that guy ain't shit. I mean, he likes to act tough and this and that. He's not really all that. And he was known to be like a hothead. He got drunk and got in some kind of a fight with some guy at a bar, and he got his ass kicked. And then Carlos told his Latin King buddies to jump in to help him out, otherwise they'll some kind of punishment or some kind of whatever thing, penalty, I don't know, whatever they do what they do. So they jumped him just so you can gain an advantage, which is pretty cowardly. You know, if it really did happen that way, and I kind of like didn't see any kind of reason why she would lie or make it up. I saw him fight somebody that was my older brother, all because of some big misunderstanding at a house party, which I talked about in one particular video. And he got very paranoid, and he thought my brother was involved in a gang, and they started charging him up. There was a big scuffle, and then they had to break it up. Now, this guy is known to be like, how he just, like, I don't know if he wants to portray himself as being crazy or something, I don't know. But I do know that a lot of people, there were some people that actually didn't like him at all. And he was one of the original ones, the original Latin Kings from Milwaukee. He's the one that started the chapter. Him, along with Mustafa, which is another guy, and Carmelo. That was their names. The Latin King guy from Chicago, I never got his name or knew who he was. Now, the thing about it is, with this guy, he's known to do a bunch of stupid and crazy shit. So I guess after so many years, he pretty much wised up and decided to, you can't just be gangbanging anymore. Otherwise, he's going to end up dead. But I guess he did way too much damage. He made way too much enemies, and from what I understand, had to do with drugs or something like that. But it's bound to happen. I mean, even if you turn your life around, if you did so much damage for so many years, fighting with other people, making enemies, to the point you have to watch your back, even though you're not involved in that anymore. I mean, something like that is bound to happen. I really didn't know him. I just knew of him. I did see him around, but I didn't really exactly know him. About 90% of the people that I knew that were Latin Kings were JKs, Junior Kings, that I grew up with in middle school and high school. Like from 1985 to 1991, from that time period. Now, it's very tragic what happened to him, especially knowing that he got out of it and he tried to better his life. It's tragic. It's fucked up as hell, because it'll be one thing if he was still gangbanging and still, being a troublemaker, then I would say that, you brought it on yourself. But knowing that he got out of it, that he didn't want nothing to do with it anymore or whatever, and he was helping other kids, which was a good thing, obviously. But then for something like this to happen afterwards, I guess when you make enemies, even if you quit that life, it's still going to be dangerous. So I would say rest in peace, all respect to him. Just like with other people too, regardless of what gang they were in. Like, for example, Richard Medina, aka King Cobra, leader of the Spanish Cobras in Chicago, who got killed in 1979 by the insane unknowns. It's tragic, but you know, that's just how it is. So rest in peace with him also. And basically, a lot of the people that got killed over some stupid shit. I mean, it's not, the whole gangbanging thing is just very dumb. I mean, it's kind of understandable how someone would get into it for, for obvious reasons. I mean, growing up in the neighborhood wasn't, all that great. There's no excuse for gangbanging, obviously. But that's just how it is, and it's, it was pretty messed up. One thing that I did remember was this one particular unit known as the Gang Squad. And this was during the middle of the 1980's, and they would pretty much watch any like potential gangbangers. And I remember how they would harass even certain people that might be affiliated with gangs. Like, I remember one time I was going to a friend's house, and this was during the winter, and when I was about maybe 4 or 5 blocks away from my house, and I was only about maybe a block or two away, about 2 blocks away from my friend's house. I was going towards it. I came to this opening of this alley when I was walking down the block. This one car, which looked like a detective police car, came by, and this one guy yelled at me saying, "Hey, who are you? Where you going? What's your name?" Miguel. Like, Miguel what? Just raising his voice like, like, what the fuck, And then I told him my name, I told him my last name and this and that. And then he just, flashed the flashlight right into my face, and I was like going like this. And he says, "Okay." And he just took off. Okay, like, what the fuck? Okay, obviously they were looking for someone, or who knows what the fuck was going on. But there was no reason for him to talk to me that way at all. So I didn't really pay much mind to it. I did feel a little bit like harassed. It did kind of piss me off, but I was quick to just pretty much shrug it off, and I just kept on walking. And then I got to my friend's house, and I told him what happened, and he said, "Don't worry about it. They're just a bunch of assholes." I could understand the job that they have to do, but they take things a little too far every now and then. And I noticed that. Like, one time, the Gang Squad, they came by this one hangout right after school, and this was when I was in 8th grade. A couple of females that were dressed in black and yellow, just because they were just dressed in those colors. That's all. And the Gang Squad was harassing them, told them to get into the car. And they were yelling at them, saying, "We're not in a gang. We're not representing anything. We're not doing anything wrong. We didn't do anything." But they still yelled at them and told them to get into the car. So they had no choice, basically. And getting in trouble for doing something, some kind of illegal thing, that's one thing that I can understand. But being harassed and under the suspicion that you could be affiliated with a particular gang and trying to like draw attention to yourself or to start something or whatever. I don't know what the supposed motive was, but just because of the colors that you're wearing, I thought it was kind of dumb. And I remember when there was some kind of guest speakers from the Gang Squad that came by, and they were talking about the different various gangs, the Spanish Corpos, the Latin Kings, from the 70s and the 80s, early 80s. And after their presentation, after they finished talking, after they finished talking to us from our classroom, this took place in the library actually, not in the classroom. And then I remember when I went up to them, because when people were asking questions, I decided to ask one of them, because I was just curious back then. I was only 15 years old, and I asked them, what do you can tell me about the guardian angels? And for those of you, I'm pretty sure you know what I'm talking about. The guardian angels was this patrol unit. These people, with the red berets, with the white T-shirts, with their insignia, their whatever the trademarks, and they would patrol the streets. But they were mostly on the north side of Milwaukee, because the neighborhood was really bad over there compared to the south side. And I asked him about him, and he pretty much kind of like smirked a little bit and kind of like rolled his eyes a little bit, like, "Oh, brother." And they were like, "Yeah, they don't work with us. They're not really with. They used to be involved in assisting us at one point, but they're not with us anymore." And the way he explained it, he explained it as if, like, they're not shit. They're a bunch of wannabes. They're just, you think they think they're all that or whatever, the kind of thing. I mean, to me, I took it. I didn't know exactly what he was trying to tell me, but after a while, I felt that he was actually trying to say, we don't like them because we don't like the competition. Plain and simple. They see it as competition. They don't want to work with somebody they think might steal their thunder when it comes to trying to make the neighborhood better or whatever. That's how I took it. That's how I understood it. So the gang squad is really a bunch of assholes, and that's how they were back then. So I don't know if they probably. I wouldn't be surprised if they haven't changed. But that's how it was back then. And just to let you know, the whole gang banging thing is stupid. There's really no loyalty in it. There's people that snitch on each other just to avoid going to prison. And, this fucking bullshit brotherhood kind of thing. It's all bullshit. And that's with any gang. It doesn't matter what gang you're in. And there was also the East Side Mafiosos, which I did do a video on that. So for those of you who haven't seen that, the Milwaukee Street Gang History is called. So if you want to check it out. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Questions or comments, you know what to do. And this is Dare to Speak. And to all of you, take care.